Hello everyone, welcome back to the one more session of multimedia. In the previous sessions, we have discussed about the various concepts of the representation of the pictures and the videos. In this session, we are mainly concentrating on the sound signals with respect to the speech. So before starting, the title of the topic goes like this, that is the speech signals. Now, let us look into the concept called what is speech. A speech is an expression or a ability of a person to express his thoughts or a feeling through articulate sounds. What do you mean by articulate sounds? Articulate sounds are the sound generated by the movement of the vocal cords or the vocal organs that are associated with the human body to produce a sound. So through producing these kind of vibrations that is heard by the external entities as sound, means all the organs that is above the lungs and in association with the lungs vibrate in order to produce the sound through the mouth, and that is called speech. Next we talk about the different speech organs. See, human body is composed of many organs. In those, there are a lot of useful organs that are supporting for the production of the sound. See, lungs is the major part that is helpful for making of sound. You might be knowing that in the previous session we have discussed how sound is produced. Sound is very much important to make a communication between one human and other human. In the similar way, sound is produced by the vibration of moving bodies. So when we provide a vibration or an object is made to vibrate, it creates a pressure wave in the atmosphere. These pressure waves move from one place to another place through oscillations. So that produces a pressure wave. When this pressure wave hits a human ears, a sound is produced. In a similar way, in order to produce a pressure wave, the lungs pushes the air upwards. When the lungs pushes the air upwards, there are a lot of vocal organs or the organs that are helpful for supporting to generate the sound. The air gushes into these organs and the local cords or vocal cords that vibrate into different frequencies and produce sounds. What are those different organs that are associated with respect to the production of sound? The first is glottis. When we talk about the glottis, it is in between the neck and the chin. So glottis, pharynx, nose and the tongue and also lips. These are the different organs that helps for the human beings to produce sound. So this is a beautiful diagram that is very much helpful to understand the different organs of the things. Look at this diagram where you find the glottis. Glottis is at the lower point, which is something like a combination of like a chords. When you say chords, you might have seen many of the musical instruments. There would be a diaphragm kind of thing. When air gushes into it, it vibrates, and it also acts as a parameter or a filter which pushes the air in a limited range. So this range of movement is unknowingly done with the humans because he has his practice of talking. So vibration and the limitation of air pressure causes the sound pressure. So this is a pharynx, and this pharynx helps to channelize the flow of the air. And there's nose and tongue and the lips are the other means of vibration articles. So they constitutes the whole part of making a sound. So when all the organs cooperate with one another, they produce sound. You might be noticing that different person's voice is different or which is not identical with one another. How it is caused? The chords gap or the gap of vibration between one person varies from other person. That is why we hear different kinds of sound, or the person's voice is identical, or we can other words say each person's voice is different from one another. Next, we can see the concept of speech signals. When we talk about speech signals, speech can be processed by humans or machines. Now you might be knowing that there are many devices or mechanical things which resonate and produce or utters a sound like a human beings. So when we talk about speech signals, it can be produced both by human beings as well as machines. It is a dominant mode of communication amongst the human beings. So most of the human beings, 99% of human beings communicate with one another through the speech. So that is called the speech communication. So there is a barrier between one person to another that is overcome by understanding of one person's speech by other persons, though it has a interlink. So it helps to bondage. And the third one, the field of study of digitization of these signals is called digital speech processing. So what we call it as digital processing is the study of the digitization of the speech signals is said to be a digital speech processing. Next we talk about the human speech. This is a wide area that's been used, or the work has been done from very past years. Let us talk about this one now. The speech is based on the spoken languages. Okay, it means it has semantic content in it. What do you mean by semantic? It's the smallest meaningful words that are associated with one another is called semantic contents. A speech should have a semantic content, means whatever we talk should make sense. So only when it is making a sense we can understand it as a speech. If the word was spoken by a person is not understood, it is not we don't call it as a speech, but is an utterance of sound in a speech synthesis. Means if I say hello, it's a word. Hello is a word, whereas is not a speech, but it is just a utterance. So these are the difference between the meaningful word and just a utterance. This semantics can be classified into two types. First one based on the contents. Categorization. First is a conceptual meaning, means the word has to have some conceptual meaning in it. Second one, associated meaning, means the word should have an associated meaning with respect to the previous word or a next coming word. Best example, these are houses. When I say these are houses, these have a meaning with respect to houses, means if I use the only word these and say silent, and it doesn't have, or it doesn't make any sense. When I use the word house, it has a meaning, but when I use the combination of words like these are houses, this sentence has a meaning. Now we call this as a semantic process, means the words which has a relation between one another is called the semantic concepts. Next, human beings use speech organs. So without knowing themselves, they change the frequencies to utter the noises. Consider the word hello. I am using one kind of utterances, means I am using my vocal cords by vibrating. If I say computer science subject, there is a frequency, lot of frequency. I don't set my vocal cords like this, or I stand in a different position, or don't do any kind of modification, but I gradually speak in that way because human beings are adopted to it for varying different kinds of frequencies and make it as a communication. Speech understanding. What does it mean? Speech understanding means the efficient adaptations with respect to speaker and also its speaking habits. Whenever a person, like you students, whenever you listen to a particular teacher first time, you might find it difficult to assess it or analyze the person's different words. But as the days goes on, you get adopted or acquainted to that person. Means you are associated and you know all the pronunciation and all the teaching styles of that teacher, then you can hear all the words spoken by the person very comfortably. That is called the speech adaptation. Next is, despite of a large number of dialects. When you say dialects, dialets, we call it as dialects. What is this dialect? Dialects are a particular form of language which is spoken by a particular group of people or particular set of pronunciation. You might be knowing a different region in India, where a north region pronounces the word zero in a different way, whereas in the south they pronounce the number zero in a different way. The best example is some call it as zero and some call it as zero. So there are different pronunciation. Though the pronunciation is different, you are able to understand what is that person he is intended to say. So those are called the dialects. So despite of large number of dialects and emotional pronunciation, we can understand each other languages. This is about the human speech. In continuing with that, brain, we know that brain, which is capable of separating the different kinds of speech signals with respect to the other interferences noise. So brain knows which to identify and which to neglect, calling it as a noise. How does it do? So brain is capable of separating these things because brain knows the grammar, syntax, phonetic. When we say about phonetic, it is the study and the classification of sound, and also lexicals. When we call it a lexical, it is the relationship between the words with respect to vocabularies and the languages. Brain is able to clearly classify all these things. So from this, we are able to analyze what is sound. And one more thing, it is very difficult to say that though human beings have 2 ears, okay, we are facing a difficulty in understanding only the sound received by this ear and this ear. We are not able to separate it. So both the things that received in the ears are assessed as one. The reason why we have already discussed in the previous class with respect to sound and psychoacoustics. In that chapter we have already gone through it. So what is the persistence of sound? How does sound differ from one place to another? What makes the sound? That is the delay concepts, and all these things have been already discussed in the previous sessions. Next we talk about the speech signals. When we talk about the speech signals, it has two characteristics. What are those two characteristics of speech signals? Now, the two characteristics of speech signals with respect to human speech are, the first one is voiced speech signals. What are these voice speech signals? Voice speech signals are nothing but the vocabularies or articulate sound generated by the humans is said to be voice speech signals, which has a periodic in nature. When we talk about the periodic concepts, it is periodic structure, means those sound stays for a period of time with a definite structure like periods. So what is that period? How does it form one period and the second period and the half cycle we have studied in the first session of the sound. So when we refer to that, we understand what is periodic structure. So that determine the intervals so that these signal persists in the human ear for at least or minimum of 30 milliseconds. Means this is the structured voice signals that persists with respect to a definite structure in the human ears for more than or at least 30 milliseconds is said to be the voiced speech signal. A second one is formant. And it should be, many of the times students write it as format. It is not format. When you say format, is the pattern, where here we are using the word called formant, F-O-R-M-A-N-T. What does it mean? It is a characteristic component of a quality of utterance. Means, what do you mean by utterance? It is just a sound generated at that instance of time is called utterance. And also we call it as local maxima. Means, what does we look into it? Here when we call it as a format, we see a sound pattern. At particular pattern we see a sound peak, that we call it as the format. So when we talk about the characteristics of a speech signal, it is very important to understand the processing of application. The first one is the speech signal, voice based speech signals, and second one is format. Next we look into it one of the interesting topic called speech synthesis. Let us look into the word synthesis. What do you mean by synthesis? We might have heard about this word called synthesis. Means manufacturing, generating, creating, all these things come into picture. When we call about speech synthesis, here we are generating the speech. How are we generating? What are we generating? The question or that the topic that we are about to discuss here. Here we are talking about here we are mainly concentrate or we are talking about text to speech signals. The first, computers can translate the encoded messages or description of messages into a speech called the speech synthesis. Text to speech is one of the characterization or characteristics of speech synthesis or one type of speech synthesis. There are a lot of commercial softwares available in the market which are able to convert all the text, most of the text that's been given in the textual form or a descriptive way into a voice kind of thing. We call it as speech. But even though in spite of lot of software available, they lack in some of the vocabulary words, that is articulation speech, that doesn't come exactly like human pronunciation. This is one lack. Second one, with over the lot of technology available, with current technology, with various technology though it is available, currently the speaker dependent recognition, when we call it as speaker dependent, a particular person's voice is recognized based on how many words a particular voice can be recognized. We call it as speaker dependent for about 25,000 words. If a speech is recognized by saying, oh, this voice or this speech is from particular that person, it could be happened with respect to the recognition of 25,000 words at least. When we call it as speech independent, means even though in spite of a person speaking, we are able to classify it to some extent with at least 1,000 words. This is the difference between the speaker dependent and speaker dependent speech synthesis. Next, there might be all the problems associated with the speech synthesis. The few major problems that are causing the conversion of speech synthesis, that is text to speech, is the first one, recognition itself. Means the dialects. When we say about dialects, it is the external type of language that are associated with a particular set of people, their pronunciation. When we say about particular set of people, the particular set or a group of people use different kinds of speech, means their pronunciation varies with respect to a particular words. I have given the example of the zero. And next one is a pronunciation with respect to emotions. You might be knowing that some people, when they are happy, they laugh for a few milliseconds and then say a word and again laugh and again they say the words. Means the laughing has been introduced in between the words. And some of them laugh in a continuous sequence, then say a word and again they laugh it for a larger extent. And some just pronounce the word when they are happy in a different way. Okay, even when they are sad, the pronunciation varies from one person to another. So these are the problems that might be causing. Now one more problem is the external noise. The external noise associated with that particular speech might be able to cause a problem in identify the particular speech itself. So these are some of the problems that are causing with respect to speech synthesis. The next topic that we are about to go with respect to the speech signals is speech output. The next concept here is speech output, simple thing, which deals with the machine generated speech. Since we are talking about the various mechanism, here we talk about how does machine generate the speech. Considerable work has been done in this area from past many years, or we can say it from many decades. Lot of research, invention has been done in this area. In 19th century, a person called Helmholtz used several connected mechanical resonators in order to provide the vocal synthesis or a vocal cord like speech to utter the sound. He has already done many decades ago in 19th century itself. Whereas in 1940, a person called Double, he developed a speech synthesizer which simulated the mechanical speech from electrical oscillating circles. Means he developed a speech synthesizer which was almost like a speech of a human being. But what are the limitations of these things? Some of the limitations are they do not pronounce exactly with respect to the human's voice. It would be something like a robot speaking because of the resonating effects. And sometimes the main drawback of these kind of speech synthesizers is they do not have or they do not add emotions into the speech. That is the main drawback of the speech synthesis. Next topic. Before going into any of the furthermore, we need to know the different concepts or the technical terminologies that are used in the speech synthesis. We will see it one by one. So, let us look into the terminology. The first terminology is the speech basic frequency. What is this speech basic frequency? It is the lowest periodic signal that occurs in a voice sound. Lowest periodic signals, it just might be utterance of sound. If someone asks, did you have the lunch? I say, yes. That is a particular speech. Now, rather than using the word, I utter a sound. That is a basic, I say, Means what is that? Though I say, it is a communication. Means I uttered a sound that conveys to that person saying that, yes, I had a lunch. So, this is the importance of the basic speech frequency. Second one is phoneme. What is this phoneme? Phoneme is one of the basic elements when we talk about the speech signals. So, it is said to be the smallest unit of speech distinguishing from one word to another word. I will repeat, the smallest unit of distinguishing element used in a speech from one word to another word. How does it differentiate? Let us look into the differentiation words. Here, let us consider, I am supposed to use the word called tap. The key word that is distinguishing from different words is the characteristic of the particular word called P. Just P. Look at this. This is tap. That is called phoneme, smallest unit of utterance of a sound with respect to a word that makes a different word different from one another. So, this is called the P, whereas if I say TAP, tap, it is tap. Next, this is example. Second one, whereas two words are similar with respect to TA, here it is P and here is B. I make tab. Now, this is totally different from this word, that is tap and tap are totally different. So, this is called phoneme. I will give you one more illustration, whereas here it is TOP, top. So, the particular word, phoneme, a particular characteristics of one is different from this tap and the top. So, this kind of differentiation made from one word, in the one word with respect to other word is said to be phoneme. Next is allophones. So, allophones are the extended features of phoneme where it is considered to be the single functions of the sound. What do you mean by single functions? So, the best example that can be considered is association with apostrophe S. Single functions. Now, look at the word called house. single function, that is allophone. Word house is an allophone. It has meaning stating that it is a building. Next, houses, apostrophe s, it makes a different sense with respect to house and houses, because a single apostrophe s adds a multiple functions into it. The best example is this house and houses using of apostrophe ss. Next is morpheme. Morpheme is a meaningful linguistic unit, whether it is free of or bound together. Means it is a meaningful linguistic unit with respect to a particular language is said to be morpheme. So we know about the phoneme. Phoneme is the smallest unit, whereas basic sound frequency is the utterance. Phoneme is a particular word, whereas allophones makes the difference, able to identify the functional difference between one word and other word. So morphones are the meaningful linguistic unit which are free form or in a bound form. Next, we see about the voiced sounds. When we say about a voice sound, it is a generation of collection of vocal cords. When we say collection, it is the set of things that oscillates here. Collection of vocal cords means a lot of things which are from the pushing of the air from the lungs to the things that come out from the mouth, means lot of organs are associated, as we have discussed various organs that produces sound. All these organs vibrate. In order to, how do they vibrate? They oscillate between one another, so and produce sound. Let us consider the example of yum. When we say yum, we need to have a sound concatenation and sound association of pressure in a various way. Yum, w, L, we feel some kind of vibration in our throat. Even here in the larynx, we can feel that. If you hold it and say yum, W, L, we will be able to find the moving of this vocal organs. So this is called voice based sound or a vocal sound or voiced sound. Next is unvoiced sound. When we talk about the unvoiced sound, there is no much vibration of the organs needed. The best example that can be considered for the letter pronunciation is F, yes. So we can keep our vocal cords open, means there is no need to do up a contraction or the movement of the vocal cords much, but we can just say F, yes. See, just by moving of the lips and the tongue, the sound is produced. This is called unvoiced sound, means that is just the utterance of the thing. If you just make a sound and stop it for a little frequency, it becomes yes. Utterance, it has no meaning, it is not a phenomenon. And a small length or small frequency of it becomes F. So this is called, that's why it is called unvoiced sound. Next is a reproducible speech output. Till now we have discussed how speech has been synthesized. Now we will see how speech can be played out or how it can be outputted. Means when you say about output is playing out. So one thing should be considered. If you want to play something, First, it has to be stored. So let us look into this in concept. Now what are we concentrating here is how speech is played and stored. That is the intention of this concept. The basic idea, it's a straightforward method of speech output. When we say about the speech output, simple, no the exaggeration here. Whatever the speech is there, we need to produce it and produce it outside to the outside world. Means we need to play it, simple. So next thing is the speech spoken by humans are recorded first. Means whatever we are speaking is recorded, and then if the information is to be outputted, it is played. Thus this sequence of information is just played on a output devices. The best example is looking at the videos now what we are doing. All the things what I wanted to convey is recorded over the video, and next when this information is to be produced as an output to you, we play it, so or you can play it. So this is the best example that can be considered for this topic called reproducible speech output. Next, the speaker can always be recognized. I always told you that in the previous session and also in the beginning of this session, a speaker can be recognized as speaker dependent sound, speech or analysis. How does he is being recognized? There are 25,000 keywords to identify the particular speaker by the adaptation with respect to speaker's habit and his pronunciation. Next, an independent speaker can also be recognized to some extent with respect to 1,000 words. Now the most common thing that we use here is the limitation with respect to vocabulary. Means here when we want to recognize a person, whether it's a dependent or independent, there should be a limited vocabularies, because as the vocabularies gets increased, it is difficult to identify the speakers because we have the limited data libraries. So this is the one of the major problem. So increasing this size of the library is an extensive work. So it has been going on, still people are working on it, but it needs lot of extensive work to be done in this region. And finally, we have discussed already how does sound been represented on a computer. We know that to represent this sound is said to be a pressure waves. These pressure waves need to be digitized in order to be stored on a computers or any memory devices. So it needs to be sampled. So there we used the PCM, that is pulse code modulation. In the similar way, speech is also been associated with the pressure waves. So these pressure waves or the speech has to be digitized. These sampled at a different sampling rate. So we use PCM, that is pulse code modulation, in order to sample and next digitize this and store it in one place. Then after storing, the stored information can be played any number of times at any place. So this is the concept of reproduction of a speech sound. The first thing is the sound or the speech is a simple straightforward output. It needs a identification of the speech adapter or a speech independent speaker. So when identifying, it uses 25,000 words, or non-independent, it uses 1,000 words. Then these speech has to be converted into digital signals. So we use PCM, that is pulse code modulation. So what is pulse code modulation? How does it work? We will study in the chapter 3, where we represent the sound on a storage media in detail with respect to calculations and other things. Then finally, this stored information can be played over the different medias. Next, sound concatenation in a time range. Usually, the sound or a speech can be concatenated in two types, in two categories. The first is with respect to time range, and secondly, it can also be concatenated using the frequency range. So let us look into the sound concatenation in the time range first. The speech can be output by concatenating of sound waves over the time scale. What does it do? It puts all the sound speech signals into different small units called the sound or speech units. The individual phonemes are understood as a speech unit. The problems here that arises with respect to the concatenation is that is a transition between the one phenome and another phenome. The best example that can be considered is while we are saying something, immediately the variation of voice stops or the changes before we start with the one another. Some of the people say in a very fast way, at the end of the particular pronunciation they drop the sound. So these are called the transitions of the sound between one word to another. So because they do not maintain the same kind of time range of the sound over a complete sentence. So let us look into the first one. Let us take an example of the word called stairs. Next, let us look into the first concept, that is sound concatenation of a phenome with respect to time range. Let us consider this example. Now look at this illustration with respect to diagram. Now this individual, we call it as phenome, the smallest unit or occurrence of a sound is said to be a phenome, means that represents the word. So here the stairs, S-T-E-A-I-R-Z, it is pronounced like stairs. So we say it as a pronunciation stairs. So here at this page, A is said to be having of highest range. So over a period of time, see, look at when we say stairs, at the yes, over the time range, it was very less. As we got till A, it reached the peak level. Then again, it dropped. So this is the representation of sound frequency where different phonemes are concatenated to form one. That is called the sound concatenation of phonemes over the time range. Next, diaphone. What is diaphone? So phenome is a single word. Diaphone is the two phonemes. Two phonemes combined together forms a diaphone. Let us look into the diagram. Means here the two words, these are called the individual phenome. Let us take these two words, ST, and the second time T is associated with E, and then E is associated with at, and this is associated with at is associated with Z. Now when we look into the curve, when we pronounce stairs, in general it goes like this at this range high. See, stairs. So at this peak of time we raise the amplitude. So these are the individual things. At somewhere at this region it gets high, and over the period of time it gets disseminated. So this is called the sound concatenation of diaphragm in the time range. Next, it is always better. Okay, it is always better to pronounce the word that has been achieved as a whole, because when we try to pronounce the word as a whole, it makes sense. When we try to announce the word or pronounce the word by splitting, it makes different senses. So like ST, and if you give a pause at TE, so it makes a different meaning, or different phenomes or diaphones which are not meaningful. All these things becomes as utterances, just an utterance of sound. Whereas if I say stairs, that becomes a continuous motion of the word that has a meaningful meaning. So this is called the sound concatenation with respect to time range. The next concept here is sound frequency range. Sound can also be concatenated over the frequency range. This is the next concept that we are about to deal. So this is the alternative method for concatenation of the sound with respect to time range. We can affect the sound concatenation in a frequency by the concept called formant synthesis. What do we do exactly in the formant synthesis? In acoustic, a formant is usually defined as a broad peak. When we say broad peak, let us consider this is a narrow peak. When we say a broad peak, where the peak is more, where the highest frequency is for a longer period of time, we call it as broad peak. So this is called the frequency concatenation with respect to maximum broad length of a frequency. So what is we use? We use filters here. We filters to simulate the various vocal tracks. Next, what are the problems that we encounter here is the first thing. The first thing that we first kind of problem that we encounter is articulation, co-articulation. This is a major problem that we encounter where we are, whether we are bothering about or concentrating about the sound frequency over the time range or the sound frequency over the frequency range. The first problem is articulation. What is this articulation? The problem that persists over the sound transitions or the phenome transition from one unit to another unit is called articulation. The second problem that we encounter is produce, or it is also called as prosody. What is prosody? Prosody is the rhythm. When we say about a rhythm, when we hear the music goes in a constant ups and downs, means a continuous rhythm. If there is a different phases of change in the rhythm, it is very difficult to understand those and conconnect over the things, because the frequency will be affected, whereas in time range again the elapsing of that spacing or the elapsing of that phenomes varies. So in these these are the two main kinds of problem that persist over the sound concatenation of anything, either with respect to frequency range or with respect to time range. Next, we concentrate on the speech synthesis. Speech synthesis, what is it? It is used to transform the existing text into a acoustic signal is called a speech synthesis. I'll repeat it again. The transformation of available text into the acoustic speech signal is said to be a speech synthesis. This concept can be well defined or explained with the help of a diagram. Let us look into it. And this is the dictionary where we have transcription, a process called transcription. Next we have sound transfer, then we have the one more process called synthesis, this diagram what I am drawing here is also called as components of speech synthesis. In one of the exams it was asked, with the help of a diagram, explain the various components of a speech synthesis. I assume that it was asked for 8 marks. Look at this. What we are dealing here? Mainly here we are dealing with the speech synthesis, production of the speech from text. Now here, what are we providing as an input? The first input is the text. When the text is provided as an input, the process of transcription converts all the text that is given into identifiable phonemes. How do they identify? It uses the dictionary. In the dictionary, there will be a lot of vocabularies or the phonemes already stored. So using this dictionary, it is used to identify the individual meaningful unit that can be uttered as a speech. So with reference to dictionary, it takes back what exactly the speech has to be. So then it converts into the sound script. So transition takes the input as a text, then converts it into a sound script with the help of the dictionary, where the lot of vocabularies are already reposited into it, and with the help of those repository, it converts into sound script. Then these sound scripts are transferred with the help of various associated processes. So sound transfer is a process where this script is being synthesized, means generated. When we say about synthesis, we know that generation or framing or producing. So are produced and we listen it as a speech. I would repeat this explanation again. The text is provided as an input to the process called transcription, where transcription, in this process, the text is converted into the sound script. Thus, it is converted into sound script with the help of a dictionary, which has been used as a reference point, where a lot of repositories of the phonemes and the sound, that is, utterances, are provided in this dictionary as a library. With the help of the library or a dictionary, it converts those into a sound scripts. In the sound script, the various sound, how it has to be produced, is being referred, and it is being synthesized, and finally the speech is produced. The first concept, let us consider this part. This can be considered as step 1, and this part, second half, can be considered as step 2. The step 1 is obviously done by computers, like the various softwares are used, whereas this second part is to be done by the processing of signal. So we call it as signal processing component, where to do this concept, lot of computers and their dictionary libraries are already available in this. So this is about the speech synthesis. So in this session, we have discussed a lot about the speech concatenation of various things, speech output, and also the speech synthesis. So these are the topics I had wished to discuss in this session. Thank you for listening.